Hi, it's Ian Freestone. If you're just listening to this on YouTube and you've got opportunity, then you might like to watch it instead because I've got the pictures on the YouTube clip. Enjoy.
Consider the ravens. They do not sow or reap. They have no storeroom or barn, yet God feeds them. And how much more valuable you are than birds. Who of you by worrying can add a single hour to his life? Since you cannot do this very little thing, why do you worry about the rest? Consider how the lilies grow. They do not labour or spin, yet I tell you, not even Solomon in all his splendour was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, how much more will he clothe you? In 2012, after 20 years in full-time ministry, I took an extended sabbatical and I unplugged. Phone, email, socials, all the noise that had been cramming my life. And in the quiet, I started seeing things. Small yellow flowers pushing up between concrete pavers. Stopping, noticing, responding in a way I never had before. And underneath, a growing sense of how deeply God has written his character into what he has made. As the psalmist says, the heavens declare the glory of God, the skies proclaim the work of his hands. And as we've just sung, indescribable, you are amazing, God. The writer of that particular song drew their inspiration from the last couple of chapters of Job, incidentally, where Job marvels at creation and how it reflects the image of God. O Lord my God, when I in awesome wonder consider all the works thy hand have made. I see the stars, I hear the roaring thunder, all of it leading to praise to God. When COVID grounded us, I decided to give bird watching a go. Coming up on 6 years, thousands of photos and 645 Australian species later, but who's counting? I have learnt more than just about birds. I began reading Jesus differently. In Matthew 6, he says, look at the birds. Literally, look hard. Then in Luke 12, he goes further, consider the ravens. Look hard and think hard. Study them, which tells me something. Creation isn't only evidence that God exists, it's a teacher. When we slow down enough to look properly at the birds of the air or the lilies of the field, and yes, even the ant, as we'll discover in Proverbs, we learn stuff. Something about the character of the Father, something about the path of wisdom. Today's going to be a bit different because this morning I want to introduce you to 5 birds. And 5 things I've learned by considering them. I could have chosen any bird, but these were the 5 that came to mind. And I believe that there'll be one thing I'll say today that will land particularly for you as revelation. And I'm not suggesting you should become a bird watcher, but we are all called to slow down, notice what's around us, and listen to what God might be saying. So speak to us today, Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen. Every one of us has a magpie story. The bike helmet with the cables sticking out of it, the long way round to school for 6 weeks every September. Magpies are very intelligent creatures. Perhaps you're familiar with the story of Penguin Bloom. Wonderful story. They can mimic at least 35 other species. And not only birds, cats, dogs, you name it. But there's one particular trait that is worth knowing. A magpie can recognise around about 100 faces, and it will not swoop a friend. Not is less likely to, will not. So, stop in your garden or along your preferred walk, talk to it. Come back tomorrow, that bird now knows you. And come nesting season, you are not a target. You're welcome. But you have to do it before spring, which gives you about 3 weeks. So let's make this personal. There are people who see you as a threat. It may be nothing you've done. Most of the time, it isn't aggression. It's defence. It's what they decided about you long before they had the evidence. Jesus says, love your enemies, and gives the reason, so that you may be children of your Father who makes his sun rise on the evil and the good. So not because they deserve it, but because that's what our Father is like. As far as it depends on you, Paul says, live at peace with everyone. As far as it depends on you, which means the first move is always yours, always mine. You can spend another season keeping your distance, or you can go and stand in the garden and start talking. You've got 3 weeks. We've all heard that sound, perhaps in a rainforest, in the dense scrub up at North Head. You've heard it on pretty much every bushwalk you've ever taken. Now, hands up if you've ever seen one. That's an eastern whipbird. Snapped for 0.01 of a second at Warriewood. Here's what I didn't know until I started researching it. That sound you just heard is not one bird, it's 2. The whistle and the crack, that's the male. And that little choo-choo on the end, the bit you've always assumed was just the tail of his call, that's her. That's his mate answering. They've been together for life and they do this all day. We're going to try it. I'll give you the recording. You give me the choo-choo. 2 notes. You can't get it wrong. Are you ready? Try once more. Now, why does she bother? Researchers think she's doing 2 things at once. It's telling him, I'm still here. I'm yours. Because males are very insecure. We need to know these things. And it's telling every other female within earshot, he's taken, don't bother. Her response, now get this, is a declaration of belonging. And you know this rhythm. Traditional gospel songs are built on a line followed by an answer. Christian liturgy incorporates call and response. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Christ is risen.
He is risen indeed.
Half the Psalms were written to be sung this way. One side calls, the other side responds. Call, response. It's not just a musical technique. That's what a relationship looks like from the outside. There's a boy in 1 Samuel 3 sleeping in the temple, and God calls his name. Samuel hears it, he gets up, he goes to the wrong person. It happens again and again. He hears the call perfectly well, he just doesn't know how to answer it. So old Eli, who's half blind and 1 foot in the grave, gives him the words. Next time say this, "Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening." And Samuel goes back, lies down, and the voice comes again. And this time there's an answer. Look at that photograph again. One bird calling. That's half a duet. Somewhere out of frame there's another bird, and she doesn't have to do much. 2 notes. That's the whole answer. Samuel was given 1 line by Eli. "Speak, Lord, your servant is listening." 2 notes, that's all she gives him, and it's enough. That there is a bird that cannot fly. Well, not right now at least, and it's his own doing. Most water birds are built to stay dry. Oiled feathers, tight structure, water runs straight off, the bird sits high in the water and floats. The darter is built the opposite way. Its feathers let the water in deliberately. The bird soaks itself through because floating is no use to you when your food is 3 metres down. So it takes the water on like a weight belt, and it sinks, and it doesn't have to fight to stay under. It simply is under. Neck like a snake, body invisible, and that beak is a spear. Superbly equipped for exactly where it is. And then when it's done, it wants to go someplace else, but it can't. Everything that made it brilliant in the water has made it useless in the air. Waterlogged wings don't fly. So it hauls itself out onto a log and it opens itself up to the sun and it waits. Anyone walking past would say that bird is doing nothing at all. But it isn't doing nothing. It's doing the one thing that will get it back into the air properly, high, and a very long way, but only when it's dry. There's a verse in Isaiah 40 that ends with, "They will soar on wings like eagles." We like that part. But what does the first part of the verse say? "Those who wait on the Lord will renew their strength." Not those who push through, not those who keep going, those who wait. The disciples had just watched a dead man eat breakfast. They had the greatest news in human history and every reason to run with it. And Jesus says, "Wait, stay, don't leave until you're clothed with power from on high." So they went upstairs and sat in a room for 10 days. No preaching, no mission, nothing that looked remotely like ministry. That's not idleness, that's expectancy, leaning forward. And then Pentecost. Some of you are in a drying season right now, and you've been treating it as failure. The project that ended, the role that finished, the illness, the season where the work you used to do brilliantly is simply not available to you, and you feel like you're sitting on a log while everyone else is out fishing. We don't like being in the meantime. We want the main time. But here's something I've learnt. The meantime is the main time. It's in the waiting that the next thing becomes possible. Look at him one more time. Wings open, nothing tucked in, nothing shielded, everything turned towards the light. That's the oldest posture of Christian prayer. Waiting here for you, we will sing. With our hands lifted high in praise. And it's your only option when you've done everything you can do and you're waiting on the Son to do what only the Son can do. So, dry before you fly.
That's good.
This is a picture coming up I took of a black-browed albatross deep in the Tasman Sea between Tasmania and New Zealand. Some of these birds are hundreds of kilometres from anything solid over the middle of the ocean for days at a stretch. Now, like everything else, it has to drink. But seawater will kill this bird. Salt at that concentration in the bloodstream shuts the body down. So the albatross drinks the very thing that can kill it. It has no alternative. Here's how it survives. See just above the eye, the black brow. Underneath it, inside the skull, sits a gland, a desalination plant built into its head. That gland pulls out of the bloodstream all the salt and concentrates it into something saltier than the sea itself. Then that runs out through the nostril tubes either side of the bill, down a groove along the length of it, and it drips off the tip. Away from the eyes, out of the body, gone. The bird gets the water, the salt, goes back to the sea. Notice what it doesn't do. It doesn't avoid the salt water. It doesn't wait for better water. It takes the whole thing in, and something inside it separates what will keep it alive from what will kill it. Some of you have had a year where the only thing on offer was salt water. In Exodus 15, we read the Israelites are 3 days into the desert with no water. Then they reach a place where there is water and they can't touch it because why? It's bitter. And they call the place Mara, bitter. They named it after the taste. Moses cries out. God shows him a piece of wood. Moses throws it into the water. The water becomes sweet. Notice what God doesn't do. He doesn't march them off to a different spring. He doesn't say, you shouldn't be here, you've taken the wrong turn, let's start again. He deals with the water in front of them. Years later, in the book of Ruth, we're introduced to Naomi. She loses her husband and 2 sons while she is away in Moab. She comes back to Bethlehem and the people call out, Naomi, you're back. And what does she say? Don't call me Naomi. Call me Mara, because the Lord has made my life bitter. Bitterness must be processed. Salt that doesn't get expelled doesn't stay put. It's in the bloodstream. It goes everywhere. And this is the part of the albatross I can't get away from. the albatross will cover 1,900 kilometres before it gets back to the one chick waiting for it. But first, this bird has to get the salt out. The bitterness we don't process, we serve it up. We serve it up at dinner tables. We put it in our children. We hand it to people who were nowhere near the thing that hurt us and had nothing to do with it, and they carry it for the rest of their lives. Not because we're cruel, but because it had nowhere else to go. At Mara, God doesn't pretend the water isn't bitter. He transforms it. And the woman who said, "Call me bitter," by the last chapter, they're calling her Naomi again. Not because the bitterness never happened, because it got dealt with. It took time, but it wasn't the final word. God processed Naomi's bitterness and created blessing. So don't keep bitterness in the bloodstream. Let it go somewhere. Let it go to the foot of the cross. Because there's people waiting for you to come home. I need to be clear about the sizes of what you're looking at there. 8 centimetres, beak to tail, and about the length of your thumb. That's it. That's the whole bird. Its name, pardalo, comes from a Greek word meaning spotted like a leopard. And it lives, this is the part I love, in a hole in the ground. A tunnel running back into a creek bank with a chamber at the end. So all of that, all those beautiful spots, the yellow throat, the red rump, goes into the dirt every night. And in the day, this bird is usually feeding in the canopy of a gum tree out of sight. When I started bird watching, I saw a photograph of one in a book, and I thought, that has to be the most beautiful bird in existence. I heard they were very hard to see. You'd be looking up into the canopy, and mostly you wouldn't find them. So I was so excited when after a year of bird watching, I saw my first one, this one, on a bush track at Jervis Bay. Not up, straight ahead, 3 feet in front of me. Confession time. For most of my life, beauty was a waste of time. If a thing didn't do something, didn't produce, didn't serve a purpose, didn't get me anywhere, I had no time for it. Art galleries were a way of losing an afternoon as far as I was concerned, leading to some tension on our world trip in 2004, another story. Earlier we read, "Consider the ravens." 3 verses later, Jesus is still going, and he says it again. "Consider the lilies, how they grow. They do not labour, they do not spin, and yet I tell you, Solomon in all his glory was not dressed like one of these." Solomon, he's the achiever. Solomon is the building program, the wealth, the empire, the CV. Solomon is everything a task-oriented man wants to be. And Jesus says a wildflower is better dressed than he ever was. And it did nothing to earn it. So what's the point? Jesus tells us, if that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and thrown into the fire tomorrow, how much more will he clothe you? God doesn't only make things that are useful. He made a bird the length of your thumb, painted it like a leopard, then he put it high up in a gum tree and gave it a hole in the ground to sleep in. Nobody was watching. It didn't matter. And I want you to know, for 60 years of my life, I had no idea this bird existed. I'd certainly never seen one. 60 years. It was there the whole time, being its beautiful self, out of sight, whether I turned up or not. Here's the rub. If you've spent your life believing that what you're worth is tied to what you produce, God has never once worked that way. Not with the ravens, not with the lilies, not with the bird in the dirt at Jarvis Bay, and not with you. How much more valuable you are than birds. I'd like to invite the band up. There it is, 5 birds. There are 640 others I didn't tell you about. But the birds were never really the point. Look hard, Jesus said. Then think hard. Consider all the works his hand has made. You don't need binoculars for that. What stopped me in 2012 was just a few yellow flowers poking up through concrete pavers. I'd walked past them 1,000 times. So this week, perhaps even today, find one thing, anything, stand in front of it long enough to really see it, and then long enough to ask what God might be teaching you through it. That's all considering is. The teacher has been there the whole time. So speak to us, Lord, this week. We, your servants, are listening.